okay, so here we go. It's the wizard's turn. All right, everybody at the table is opining on what the wizard should do. Well, maybe you should cast this spell. What if you cast this spell? Well, I think you should cast this spell. Everybody's like, well, this spell and that spell and the other spell. And then the wizard's like, well, I don't know. And they're looking in there. It's like a committee discussion. And then finally, after like 10 minutes, the wizard casts a spell. It's Fireball, of course. Would you like to use more traps in your D&D games, but are disappointed by the meager offering in the core rulebooks? Treacherous Traps by Nord Games gives you 250 pre-built traps designed for levels 1 through 20 and ranging in lethality from setback to deadly. It also comes with a random trap generation system and chapters on how to use traps as well as how to design traps. And if card decks are your thing, Nord Games has broken down Treacherous Traps into 5 card decks that mirror the different level ranges of traps within the book. Pick up Treacherous Traps at the link below and use discount code SALESTRAP20 at checkout to get 20% off. I have been a player in games, and I can tell you that one of the things that has made combats really boring and unexciting is when players take too long to decide what they're going to do on their turns. Like, that is probably the number one thing that makes a combat boring to me. Like, I crap you not. It doesn't have to do with the monsters the dungeon master has on the board. It doesn't have to do with like how the dungeon master is running the monsters or the combat. It has nothing to do with that. I crap you not. The combats that I have found to be boring and uninteresting are when the other players take too long to make up their darn minds on their turn. Or when every stinking player's turn becomes a committee discussion. Like, okay, so here we go. It's the wizard's turn. All right, everybody at the table is opining on what the wizard should do. Well, maybe you should cast this spell. What if you cast this spell? Well, I think you should cast this spell. Everybody's like, well, this spell and that spell and the other spell. And then the wizard's like, well, I don't know. And then they're looking in there. It's like a committee discussion. And then finally, after like 10 minutes, the wizard casts a spell. It's Fireball, of course. And then we go on to the rogue. And everybody's like, well, you know, maybe you go over there and do this, that, and the other. And it's like, holy crap, people. Why is it a committee discussion? Why is every player's turn a committee discussion? This is horrible. I was in a game recently that was kind of this way. I'm not quite as bad as I'm exaggerating it, but I saw it happening. There was a discussion at the top of the round where supposedly all the players can coordinate their activities and stuff, and that's the discussion. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's good, right? I do the same thing. But what that's supposed to do, it's supposed to avoid the discussion on every single player's turn, but it didn't. They still were discussing on every single player's turn what they should do based on what's going on in the combat, and it was taking forever, and I was freaking out and losing my mind. Of course, I kept a good poker face, but I was like, literally, why committee discussion? So anyway, committee discussions 100% make combat boring for me, because it just takes so stinking long. Let's just lickety split it. Just take your turns and let's go. Because the more you guys are discussing what the wizard can do, it's that much more time before I actually get to do anything in the game. So I don't know. So how do you spice up combat and make it more exciting and engaging? Dungeon masters, like, don't let your players take forever to take their turns. And don't let every player's turn devolve into a committee discussion. I think that's a really good way to do it. I think there's lots of other simple things you can do. You can use terrain. You know, you can have the bad guy converse with the players as the combat is going on. So it can become a social interaction simultaneous with a combat as well. Have the bad guys use different tactics than just smoking and hitting things. Have there be conditions and effects that happen during the combat. Use spells as much as possible, or spell-like abilities, perhaps things that can't just be counterspelled every single time, because you know that happens a lot. So there are lots of different things you could potentially do to spice combat up. And I've made videos too on combat and stuff and how to make it more interesting. So there's, yeah, sorry, I think I ranted more than I answered that question. I apologize.
Click on the screen now to watch another fine DM Lair video, or to pre-order our Layers and Legends Kickstarter and get yourself 2 gorgeous hardcover books filled with 5th edition DM resources.